A worthy goal is something that excites you. You don't have a clue how you're going to get there, but boy, oh boy, you know you're going to get there. A worthy goal will cause you to wake up in the morning and do things in a day that you would not normally do.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited today. I have a really special guest, and it warms my heart to introduce Bob Proctor to all of you. And before we get started, I'm just going to ask that please hit the like button and subscribe. I'm Judy Marie. I'm the owner of Miracles of Health, and we're launching the podcast, The Second Wind. And a big part of the inspiration to the second wind is actually related to who's on this broadcast with me today. Hi, Brian.
Hi, Judy.
And welcome and thank you so much for chiming in today and what we're going to share on such short notice. So I appreciate this.
Well, you know what? It's an honor to be here with you. So yeah, happy to be here for the today.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh gosh, we're going to talk about probably some of our most passionate subjects.
Mhm.
And number one being your father. And you have worked along with him for close to 30 years. And just a little bit about that and how you were behind the scenes with marketing and collecting his emails. I love that history.
Well, it's so funny. Having Bob Proctor as a father, let's face it, it's maybe a little bit unique, a little different. It was a special thing for me. He was a great father. We were really, I mean, obviously father and son, but we're also really good friends. And I got to work with him for close to 30 years, which was spectacular. I worked with him when I was a teenager and in my early 20s. Then I kind of went off on my own. I had to do my own thing and find my own way. I got into real estate, did very well in there, and Dad kept trying to talk me into coming back, and eventually I agreed and I did, and yeah, I got to work with him, and I really worked on the marketing end of things and doing whatever I could to get his message out to the world and to expose him to the world, and it was a fun journey.
Well, Brian, and I'm sure towards the end, very sobering as well as very, very heartfelt and fulfilling, which led you to writing the book, My Father Knew the Secret. And that is really, really divine, the secret. And I didn't even put together until a few years ago who Bob Proctor was. I mean, what influence and what was behind all this? I don't think I ever shared this with you, probably maybe not too many people watching this right now, but years ago when I first heard about The Secret, I was in an office. I had a manufacturing facility in Fort Collins, Colorado, and debt over my ears beyond. One day I heard about The Secret and I said, that's it, I'm going to watch it. The next day I went in my office, I put out all the bills, all the late things. I mean, it was all over the place. And I had 75,000 in debt. And I said, either this works or it doesn't work. Okay, I'm going to believe it. If this works for other people, I'm going to believe it. And 9 months later, everything was not only paid off, but then I started to manifest so far beyond. So these true principles that have been there and that you've been a part of this and your father has been a part of this worldwide is so amazing. And I want to say, when I went through your book, it was as if I was just right there in every experience. You can feel this authentically from your heart. And I heard recently the power and the vibration of love is identical, if not even stronger, than being authentic. Okay. And this is being true. And this is what I see through the whole book of what you've written. But it's because of all the years of what you've experienced. Is this like, what led you to write this?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I started writing the book when my father was alive, and
Okay.
I can remember it was 4.5 years ago. I was having a chat with Corey, my wife, and I said to her, I said, I feel like writing a book. I feel like I've got things that I can share. And I said, but I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do it or what I'm going to say. And Corey kind of looked at me almost like I had two heads. And she said, Brian, she says, what is the question you get asked at every seminar? Hundreds, if not thousands of seminars with my father. Everybody's always asking, what's it like to be Bob Proctor's son? And it was just kind of that light bulb moment. And I thought, boy, that is a good idea. So I thought, I'm going to share all the stories, all the things that happened with my father, what I learned from him, how I applied those things to my life. And so that's what I started writing. I thought I could share who Bob Proctor is as a father, not just the man on the stage, but how he was in family life, in my life. And I certainly have a unique perspective because I grew up with him. So I started to write that, and I shared with Dad what I was doing, and he thought it was great. He loved it. And we had many great conversations around it. I can think of several of the chapters, some of our conversations that really helped enhance what I was writing because, we were bouncing off of each other. We were sharing stories with each other, how we remembered things. And it was really a joy. I did not know what I was going to title the book. I had some different ideas, and I can remember sharing them with Dad and say, it just doesn't feel quite right yet. And I remember him saying to me, he says, Brian, take your time with it. Just don't worry. It'll come when it's supposed to come. And I certainly planned on having that book out while he was around. I, had no idea that things were going to turn the way they did. Um, but he passed away, and then I continued to write the book, and it probably caused me to write things in a different way after that, for sure. But I think all in its right way. And the title came after he passed.
Mm.
Um, and I really thought, my father was such a big part of that movie, The Secret in the book and everything else. The title felt right. It came to me kind of in the middle of the night. I felt like it was divinely guided. And
Wow.
you know
Wow.
what I think what a lot of people don't know is, Bob Proctor was really one of the founders of personal development. I mean, he started teaching what we're capable of doing long before it was ever a thing,
Mhm.
and certainly long before the internet and all that we have today. And what a lot of people don't realize is that he was 72 years old when The Secret came out. And it was really The Secret that propelled him to another stage, to a larger audience. That's what got him on Larry King Live, Ellen DeGeneres, all these shows that really upped his stock. Who was Bob Proctor?
Mhm.
And it was a pretty special thing. So it was a joy to write the book. And Judy, the response after putting it out has really, honestly, it's just warmed my heart. It's been
That is
so positive.
beautiful.
Yeah,
It's so alive, just so alive. And if you're okay, I'd like to go into this. Wow, the phase that you went through with him towards the end
sure.
touched my heart so much. Um, and how present and how in tune you two were and still are, you know? Now, I'm probably going ahead a little bit, but I got to just share this, Brian. That part where you shared of how your father kissed you, okay, and that love reminded me that a number of years ago, I was adopted by the Hopis, and I have a Hopi mother who is not here now, but they've helped raise my children and myself on another level. And before she crossed over, she she grabbed my cheeks and she said, "Judy." I mean, she was in dead sleep. Okay, it just totally shocked me too. And she could feel me there, and she grabbed my cheeks and she said, "You have nothing to fear." And she said it 3 times, and this energy went all through me that still to this day just vibrates in me of such incredible divine strength. And when I read that about you and your father, it was a love potion beyond. I If you're okay to share that experience.
Sure. Yeah. So, that chapter, really, that's the first chapter in the book. And Judy, that was without a doubt the hardest chapter to write.
Mhm.
It's probably my favorite chapter because I think it really showed who my father was at his toughest time. Um, but that particular story, it just warms my heart thinking about it. He was in the intensive care unit of the hospital during his final days. And, in the intensive care, you're really technically only allowed to have visitors. I think it's an hour or maybe 2 hours a day. But I don't know what happened. The nurses knew that, he was not going to survive. And so they did not, as long as we were quiet, they didn't care how long it was in there. And dad just wanted me by his side the entire time. And we would sit there for hours upon hours and just hold hands. He'd fall asleep, he'd wake back up, and we'd chat a little bit, and he'd fall back asleep. But we held hands for hours. And this one night, it was getting pretty late. It was probably 11 at night, maybe close to midnight. And he woke up and he said, "Brian, you need to go home and get some rest." And I said, "Okay." And so I was giving him a hug to say goodbye, and I'll see you tomorrow. And this was during COVID times. So, I was gloved up. I had to have the mask, and then I had to have a shield. It was just, it was just during those times. And when I leaned over to give him a hug, he said, "Just lift the shield." And so I lifted the shield. And then he looked at me and he pulled my mask down and he pulled me in and he gave me this kiss on the lips. And oh my God, Judy, I think back to that, just the love. And it was I don't know, it was such a tender, meaningful moment. And I remember leaving and walking out of that room just crying. I mean, it was a gift. It was a gift. It's two
That
grown men. And it was just a special moment.
it's so from a lot of my shamanic background, Brian, that when certain souls are crossing over, they have to impart certain gifts, they have to pass them on. And when I read that in the book, oh my gosh, same thing. It just touched my heart so much. And I'm like, you have that gift of love. You have that you have for everything that was in there with your dad, Bob Proctor. I mean, he imparted that on you. I mean, that is the ultimate of gifts. The other ultimate of gift that I know in a shamanic way is when you do lips to lips,
Mhm.
and that is such a powerful transfer. And I know this book. I'm just going to read it and read it again because this is a story about love. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Definitely, there's so many aspects in here that I would encourage everybody to keep reading and reading over and over. And we're going to talk about some of those qualities as well. But being in this state of the world, okay, where love, vibration is so needed and wanting to be shared and wanting to be felt, and just as you've written, and I want to talk about this a little bit too, how Bob, and you're the same way, that you would make sure from people being in, just from observing you, I don't know you as personally as some people, of course, but being around your presence and what your dad believed in, that you leave them feeling better. I would really love for you to share a little bit about that too, because
Yeah.
we need that today.
Well, Dad liked to call it the impression of increase.
Mm-hmm.
And what the impression of increase really is what can you do to leave everybody that you come in contact with in a day feeling better because they came in contact with you? And I think back, if I can share the story,
Yeah.
I go back to when I was 9 years old, and that's when I learned this from him. And I put it in the book. Um, I learned it at 9, and it has stuck with me for the rest of my life. It was that powerful of a message. And we had just moved to Chicago. As I say, I was 9 years old. I was going into grade 4. Well, what you need to know is I was born in Toronto, so I started school in Toronto. A year later, we moved to London, England. So I started a new school in London. A year after that, we moved back to a different area of Toronto. I started a whole nother school there. A year after that, we moved to Chicago. So by grade 4, I'm in my fourth new school. So I was that perpetual new kid in school, and I didn't like it. And I remember sitting with Dad and telling him that. And I said I was nervous to start school again. And I mean, I can remember this as clear as day. And I mean, gosh, I'm in my 60s now, so it's not like it was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I remember Dad said to me, he says, Brian, this is all you need to do. Put these 4 letters across the forehead of everybody you speak to, MMFI, and it stands for Make Me Feel Important. He said, if you can make everybody that's in front of you feel important, feel seen, feel heard, he said, you're going to make friends really easily and you're going to get along great in the world. And that was really it. He said, you can pay a compliment to somebody, even if you're not really big on that person, you can find something good about them and you can pay them a sincere compliment. Sometimes it's just listening to somebody when they're telling a story, being interested in what they have to say. He said, it's always better to be interested than to try to be interesting. He said, if you can be interested in somebody and really listen to them and consciously be in the present moment with that person.
Mm-hmm.
He said, you will leave them with the impression of increase. You'll leave them feeling better because they were in your presence. And that's really it. And, it's oftentimes I think when somebody tells us a story, and it's something maybe we've done and maybe we've done it better, how often we try to jump and say, oh, I did that too, and I did it this way. Sometimes it's better to bite our tongue and just let that person relish in their story. Because sometimes if we say, oh, I did it even better, you actually diminish their story. And that's part of what it's about. And I learned that at a young age. Um, I hope that I still, do that today. I really think that it was a great lesson he imparted, and he did that, and he led it by example. I remember at the end in the hospital there, we had this one nurse that she came in, and Dad had tubes and everything coming out of them all over the place, and she needed to put in another IV. And Judy, this nurse was getting very anxious. She was poking and poking and poking and could not get a vein. And I remember sitting in that hospital. I'd hear other patients yelling at the nurses and doctors, and they were very unkind. And I get it. People are at their worst state when they're in there. And Dad was not in a very good place. He was in a lot of pain. He was very uncomfortable. But here's the thing. He never took it out on anybody else around him. He never let his current circumstance dictate how he would treat those around him. And I can remember when this nurse was doing this, Dad put his hand on her hand and he just looked her in the eyes and he said, don't worry, dear, you're doing a great job. You just do whatever you need to do. It's all okay. And Judy, in that instant, it was so great that I was there to witness that. And I was so proud of him. And I saw the nurse instantly relax. It just like eliminated the stress from her. And then bang, she got the vein and it was done. It was just such a wonderful thing to experience. But just seeing the way that he treated this lady was everything to me. And I know that when he left the hospital, he came home to pass away. I mean, gosh, the staff and the people in the hospital, they were, all saying goodbye to him. I mean, he just touched them in that way. And that's a gift. That really is a gift.
And Brian, it goes back to some things you've written in the book, and I'm sure you've experienced um, throughout your life or cultivated too about self-love. You've written a bit about that and self-esteem and how your father was on such a path of studying about self. I don't have it in front of me right now, but in the book I recently just wrote, I put this segment in there that he talks about being free to be me.
Hmm.
And bottom line, you better know who me is, you know,
Right. Yeah.
and and that is that's where I want to spend a few minutes and really let's talk about that about because what you described that you witnessed with your dad, it comes from a connection of love, no judgment, no criticism, nothing negative. And this is very important to cultivate in our life right now.
Yeah, self-love is really everything. We can never love another person in such a fulfilling way unless we truly love ourselves. Not to say that we can't love others if we don't love ourselves. We can, but it will never be in a depth if unless we truly love ourselves. And Dad was it was kind of funny. Sometimes, at a seminar, he would talk about this and he would stand on stage and he'd kiss himself, and it was quite entertaining and everybody would laugh. Well, then he'd have everybody do it to themselves. And it
Mm.
was really interesting to watch the audience because some people would do it gladly and other people struggled with it. It was really kind of interesting. And here's something that I don't know where I heard it. It probably was my father, but it's just this. Would you be friends with somebody who speaks to you the way you speak to yourself?
Oh,
You
I
really
love
need to
that.
think about that.
Yeah.
Um, it-
Mhm.
so often we can berate ourselves in our own mind. Would you be friends with somebody that spoke to you the way you speak to yourself? And if you wouldn't, then change the dialogue. That's it. We need to love ourselves first. We need to stop being so hard on ourselves. And if we can have self-love, we're going to show up in the world in a different way, in a better way. And it's an important thing.
And we'll attract the people, the places, the things around us on a different level. You also mentioned about negative people,
Mhm.
okay, and versus those that stomp down the dreams, versus support the dreams. And I'm sure you've had maybe some of that in your life too. I've had that in my life too, where it could even be a relationship or family members. Their fear would want to just kind of squish the joy,
Right.
so then you become a little more selective. You get a little wiser on how to share what with who and when, and I'm sure let's talk about that for you, even learning this at this point.
Yeah, that's something I learned probably at a fairly young age. And it's always this, only share your dreams, your aspirations with people that you know will support you. If you share them with somebody that you know might not support you or may look at you with envy or anything of that nature, it's not a good thing because they'll knock you down. And unless you have incredible mental strength, it can knock you off of your thoughts.
Mhm.
Um, there's people that are in my life that, family, friends, whatever, that are maybe not the most positive people in the world. And I don't share with them all of my aspirations because I know that they're going to look at me like, who do you think you are? And quite frankly, I just don't need that energy. But the interesting thing is, those type of people, they're always looking for the bad in something. And what do they attract in their life? They attract more negative. They attract more bad. And you need to find a way to surround yourself with people that are always looking for the positive, looking to enhance life. Those are the people you want to share your dreams and aspirations with because they're the ones that will support you. My father, he was quite frankly, Jude, he was my biggest cheerleader. I
Yeah.
could always share what I was going after with him, and he would always encourage me. And he did it in such a great way. He would always like, if I had a specific goal, he would that morning we'd be chatting. He'd say, Brian, what are you going to do today that's going to get you a step closer? and it was just always encouraging. It was such a great thing. Now that he's gone, my wife Corey, she's my cheerleader, and she knows everything I'm going after, and she's forever, what are you going to do today to get to this? Or, before I jump on a podcast like this, do you have some things you want to look over just to keep things fresh in your head? She's always supporting, and we need to surround ourselves with people like that. And those are the people that we want to share our aspirations with.
Mhm.
If we can stay guarded in that, we will get to bigger things quicker because we won't let other people knock us down.
Brian, I don't know if it was you who shared this one time on stage or your dad. Um, were you in a swim team or you were involved in some sport and you were wanting to quit?
That was my brother. Yes.
That was your brother?
Yeah.
And what did your dad say to him? It was so wise.
Well, it was interesting. It's I don't want to say the exact story because I don't want to get it wrong,
Uh-huh.
but at the end of the day, Dad basically said to my brother Ray, he said, "Well, Ray, you can quit if that's what you want to do," and he said, "You do that right now. You can be really good at quitting." And he said, "The next time it'll get easier. Before long, you'll be a real good quitter." And and he put it in a way that made Raymond realize that sometimes you need to persist through things when you don't want to do it to get better at something. And that's really, that was kind of that story. And so Ray didn't quit the swim team. He kept on going. And I think he learned a valuable lesson. I can remember when Dad would share that from the stage quite often. Um, I asked Raymond, I said, Ray, is that story like everything his dad's saying is true? And Ray said, oh yeah, it's true. It's
And that's with the idea of not quitting. You were sharing about how your dad studied and studied. Kept seeking to understand how curious his mind was and how much even towards the end he kept studying. And then you were reading to him and he wanted to hear it again. Brian, I would love for you to talk about that.
Well, here's the interesting thing about my father, Judy. He never thought he knew it all. And that's really something special because a lot of people in his position, they think they know it all. Dad never thought he knew it all. He studied every single day. And I mean, he studied up till a day to 2 days before he passed away. At that point, then he was, he wasn't conscious enough to really study, but he studied right to the end of his life. And if he couldn't read or something, he'd have me read passages to him. And sometimes I think he'd drift off to sleep and then 10 minutes later, he'd kind of wake up and he said, read that again. And he just loved to study. He loved to learn new things. Um, and that was, for me, it was something to witness. And it made me realize that we never will know it all. And if we can keep studying, keep learning. We'll just keep getting better. He says, we can always be better. It doesn't matter where we're at in life. We can always be better. And he said, better is a good thing. Um, and Dad lived that. But the interesting thing, Judy, is he lived it by example. And that's really how I learned it. He never forced me that, you need to study every day. You need to do this every day. He led by example, and I got to witness it. Um, his routine was 5 o'clock in the morning. He'd go out to a studio, which was a beautiful studio out in his backyard, and he would sit in his studio, and that'd be one of the first things he would do every day. He would study. He'd read a good book. He was forever learning, and he knew that the more he could learn, the better he could teach. And that was really what it was all about for him. He was always about trying to show people how they could live a better life. And he knew that if he never stopped studying, he would always find a better way to reach people.
And Brian, I mean, do you continue that practice? And it's when I first was in Bob's classes and learning stuff, um, I was amazed how much he would say, write this for 30 days. Then he'd say, write that chapter for the next 60 days, now 90 days, okay? And now read this. It could be a paragraph or whatever, but the level of being that present to study like that it's not in colleges, okay? It's not
Right.
in schools, okay? This is on such a level that to be exposed to that is such a gift. And is that what you continue to do? Is that what you do with people that you're teaching and seminars you're doing? You know.
It is. It is. I really feel the power of affirmations and writing things out
Mm,
daily. That's how we train our mind to look for the good, to look for, where we want to be. Dad always said that we need to live from the place that we want to be. We
mhm,
should never let our current circumstance dictate how we choose a goal, what we're going after, or how we live.
mhm,
And to do that, he was always big on repetition. Repetition is the way to change the way we exist in this world, the way we're showing up in the world. And he would have an affirmation, and he would write it out every day for months upon months. And he said, you only need to write it out until you don't need to anymore, and then it's just easy. And by writing something out every morning, he always said that we need to create a statement that is in the present tense, as if we're already there, really positive, with good descriptive words. And if we read that every day, at first we might feel like a phony. Um, but boy, oh boy, you just keep reading that every single day, you'll eventually believe it, and you will start becoming that person. That's how we change the way we are. And I mean, he showed me by example. And yes, I do it. I've got a journal here that I write in every morning, and I write the same thing every day. And it just drives home where I'm at, what I'm looking for.
mhm,
And honestly, Judy, I think it's a great way to start the day because it gets you focused on the way you want to be. And something I share in the book, both in the beginning and at the end, is what will happen in your life if you show up as the best version of you every
mhm.
single day? My God, your life will change. If you consciously choose to be the best version of you every day, your life is going to improve. It's going to get even better. And even if it is great now, it can still be better.
Even
And
better.
yeah,
So, yeah, Brian. So, what you're talking about, I think, is a very, very valuable recipe that you were sharing in your book about how you met Corey. Okay. So you're talking about coming, how we can change some paradigms in the past and our experience of the past and what you did to create this wonderful relationship that sounded like it was already in progress, for a while. But you have a formula. You have a formula of how your dad shared with you what to do about that. And for people, I know for myself, I'm with a partner that, oh my goodness, I would not want to live a day without, and how there's such a soul connection. But I didn't know that formula, initially at that point. But for for anyone listening, I mean, this you can apply it to not only attracting your ideal relationship, but you can apply it to anything else. So,
every area of your life. Yeah, I'll share a little story around that because I think there's value there.
mhm,
I'll be the first to say I was in my 50s and I was single. I had been in and out of a lot of failed relationships, things that just didn't work out. And I take responsibility for that. I never really was firm on what I was looking for. I would just allow whatever happened to happen. And I'm in my 50s, and gosh, I'm not sure what triggered it, but I can remember thinking that, that is a question that people have always asked in the seminars. People are always like, how do I attract that perfect partner? And Dad would share this exercise. And I thought, it's maybe time I do this exercise. I had never really done it before. And the exercise is is to take a sheet of paper and draw in the middle, your ideal partner, and then just draw a sunburst out of it, the different qualities that your partner would have. And I thought, boy, it's time for me to do this. So Judy, what I did was I opened up my computer, I opened up a Word document,
Mhm.
and I started to write out what would be my ideal partner. Um, what she would be like, what she would enjoy. She'd like coffee in the morning, a glass of wine in the evening. She was going to be kind. If she had kids, she treated her kids really, really well. Um, and I had all kinds of qualities around who she was. Dad always said, never put a face to the person because then you're mucking with somebody else's.
Mm.
He said, just write out the qualities of the person that you'd like. And so I did this and I started to write it out. And I had a whole big page of things on there. And every morning I would open up this document and I'd read it. And sometimes I would add to it another quality of something I'd really like, or there was something that was like, it's maybe not quite as important to me. So I took it out and I got really specific. And then what I started to do, which is kind of interesting, I have a gratitude journal. I would write out every day all the things I'm grateful for. Well, then I started to write out that I'm grateful that this woman is coming into my life, just allowing it to happen. And I was grateful that it was starting to happen. Well, without going into long story, Corey came into my life, and it was like my father for sure had something to do with this. But Corey fit absolutely everything that was in that document, except for one thing. I wanted somebody that lived close to where I lived. She couldn't have lived further away on the continent than where she lived. But at the end of the day, that didn't really matter. Personality wise, she was everything I was looking for. And, I also put in the document how I would treat that person. And I certainly hope I treat her, the way that she's looking for, which I feel I do. But we have a wonderful marriage. We got married very quickly. It was like we just knew. And I firmly believe that because I did that exercise, it allowed me to really see what I wanted and to bring that into my life. And Judy, I went on several dates
Mhm.
with other women, and I knew in one date if it was the right person or not because I knew what I was looking for. I
Mhm.
wasn't settling any longer. I had settled too many times in my life, and it made all the difference in the world for me. And I now am in a spectacular relationship.
That is very powerful, Brian, to personally get clear, very, very clear on what you want. Otherwise, it's by circumstance, it's random,
Right.
and when we get that focused, and that I'm sure has come from a lot of your years and the stuff that you're practicing. But I don't know when we have enough experiences where we say, well, that didn't work, that didn't work, that didn't work. Then we're finally ready for, okay, a better solution to this,
Right.
and getting clear. And you mentioned the word gratitude. Okay, and I just got to read this because you wrote something in your book. I'm going to have you go into a little more, but it really opened up a whole nother level here of why it's important with the gratitude. And you said, it's on page 69, a daily practice of gratitude helps you to reach a depth within that brings deep meaning to your life. Like, I hadn't thought about that. This is about bringing deeper meaning. Gratitude, I mean, for people who are, you know, serious about becoming the better version of themselves, we got to really ingest this. As a result, you will feel empowered and inspired. You will feel in control of your thoughts and emotions, and you will operate with a sense of calm. Your choice, not your circumstances, will create the life you desire, but you got to connect it with gratitude. You did a fabulous job. I mean, writing and explaining this, it's just on such a deeper level for me.
Well, thank you. We often hear about gratitude and we hear a lot of people
Mhm.
talking that they write gratitude journals, but more often than not, they're not. And
Mhm.
I saw my father do it. And again, leading by example. But here's the deal. When you write out what you're grateful for, that you give energy to, what am I grateful for? And you start thinking of all the good things in your life, especially if you do this first thing in the day, you open yourself up to the good in the world. That's the key, Judy. You start looking
Mhm.
for the good. When you start looking for the good, you're going to bring more good into your life. You know, I've got a gratitude journal here that I use
Okay.
that came from both of our good friend, Tommy Collier.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to read a quote that is on the back of this gratitude journal because I think this sums it up really nicely. It's by Wallace Wattles. He wrote The Science of Getting Rich.
Mhm.
He said, "The grateful mind is constantly fixed upon the best.
Mm.
Therefore, it tends to become the best. It takes the form or character of the best and will receive the best." I think that explains it all right there.
That is beautiful. Yeah. Um, when I first started going to classes with your dad, and he'd have these sheets of paper or in the journal, I am so happy and grateful, now that, or I'm so happy and grateful. And I was at such a point in my life. I really thought I was internally dying. It was so, and to come up with something that I could feel a little bit grateful for, even if it, and you wrote it, you don't have to fully feel it and believe it, but just start. And for people who are feeling so stuck in their life, the antidote is gratitude. Get one of these gratitude journals, and just start writing. But that doing that every day for several years, okay, is what it was. Then it's so habitual, it takes that, like you were saying, repetition and just bringing it back around to where it's just automatic. Oh gosh, and this reminds me, Brian, when I was there in Toronto, one of the seminars too, and someone was dealing with something. It was really good. They were talking because I was feeling exactly what they were saying. And all he did is say, come back and we'll talk more after you write out your gratitudes. There's no more discussion it until you write out your and then that's when things shift, right? when
That's it.
when we take and that's what you wrote about here in the book. It goes to a deeper level. Then we could get back into our intuition, paying attention to that. It starts opening up our flow of life again.
It does. I mean, if we get stuck or we're focused on, woe is me, things aren't going right.
Yeah.
If we gave a little bit of energy and time and just sat with a piece of paper and started to write out, what am I grateful for? And some days it might be simply a
Yeah.
cup of coffee in the morning.
Mhm.
But if you can start to get focused on what are you grateful for, it will shift your perspective. It will shift the way you look at things. And that is the start to living a better life.
I truly, truly believe that. And I absolutely experienced that. We would not be on this call recording what we are today if I did not have that experience a few years ago,
Right.
to be, and how that really turns this world around. It turns our own inner world around and
Mhm.
what we attract.
Yeah.
Um, Now I want to move on to an area. Oh my gosh, the word let. Okay, and
Yeah.
I really like to read this affirmation. It's by your wife Corey. It's so beautiful. I am writing this, going to put this all over the place. I love it. And she has in the book here, I am so happy and grateful now that I let everything in my life flow free and easy, and I focus only on what serves me toward my greater good. That's so beautiful. So this idea of how the word let, you know,
Mhm.
got emphasized here as part of all of that you're doing. And Corey, wow, with just that word, let.
Well, let is really, it is a powerful word. It's a simple little word, but it unblocks things, is the best way to describe it. I can remember many conversations with my father over my lifetime. If I was struggling with something and I was hanging on to something, some resentment or something, Dad always said to me, Brian, let it go. Let it go. And it's such a simple phrase, not always the easiest thing to do. But, when we can let go of things that are blocking us, that are holding us back, past experiences that we can't change what's happened, if we can start to let that go, we open ourselves up for a better way of living. You know, he had a great quote that he always stated. He says, you cannot change the time you got out of bed this morning. And I really liked it when he said that. That always resonated with me. And, it's what's happened in the past has happened in the past. What time you got out of bed this morning is the time you got out of bed this morning. You can't change it. It's happened.
Mhm.
But if we can focus on the right here, right now, and being in the present moment, let go of the garbage and just how can we be present right now and be the best version of us, then the past doesn't matter. And the future can be a bright thing. One of the chapters I wrote was called Looking at Life Through Rose-Colored Glasses.
Mhm.
And Dad always had me look at life this way. If he had a thing that if anything bad was happening, he would just say to me, Brian, what's the good out of that? And he'd always have me look for the good. He'd always have me shift my perspective. And so I choose to look at life through rose-colored glasses. I'm always looking at the good at everything. And some people, they look at me like I'm nuts. Well, you're not being a realist. I choose
Right,
to,
right.
yeah, I choose to
Mhm.
disagree. I think this is my reality.
Mhm.
My reality can be positive. I can look for the good in the world. And when we look for the good in the world, we bring more good into our life. Sure, I can look for the bad. And if I keep looking at the bad, more bad is going to come into my life. That's not what I want. So it's not what I choose.
Mhm.
I choose to let go of
Mhm.
things that are blocking me, holding me back, and open myself up to the good and look for the good that's around. Sometimes we may have to look a little harder than other times.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
boy, oh boy, if we can focus on that,
Mhm.
I think we're in a good place. And I think good things will happen.
I am so glad you talked about this because that is ongoing in this a holistic or on when we're in an awakening place or becoming more conscious, changing our paradigms. And then you do hear that, well, you're not dealing with reality. Okay,
Right.
just because we got a smile back on our heart, and we got a smile back in our life, and they think, okay, because you're not miserable and you're not dealing with in reality. And it's like, wait a minute, we thought, form follows thought.
That's it.
We're choosing the frequency and the vibration we want to be on, which goes into one of the close to final things I'd like to have you talk about in the chapter of love and laughter. Okay, if we're holding on to the frequencies and vibration that's blocking our joy, you're not going to laugh
Right.
much,
Yeah.
or at what. But that was a beautiful chapter.
Well, I often think I think probably one of my favorite memories of my father is his laugh. My God, he had a great laugh. And he could look at some of the silly things that were going on in life, and sometimes he'd look at even some of the bad things that had happened to him, and he would laugh about it. And he'd laugh and he'd say, God, look at how things have changed since then, because he never focused on the bad. He would laugh it off. And one of the things he always said to me, he says, if you're struggling, if you're a little down at any time, he says, go and rent a good comedy movie and just watch something funny. And it will change the vibration that you're in. Laughter will change the way we look at things, the way we feel about things. Not that it's always easy to do if we're going down a negative rabbit hole, but boy, oh boy, if we can get ourselves to look for the funny in it and to laugh it off, we change our perspective. And perspective is everything. It really is. We can certainly focus on the negative, or we can focus on the positive. We can look for the fun, or we can look for the maybe not so fun. It's our choice. And we have a choice. We don't have to let our current circumstance or people around us dictate the way we see things or the way we act. We have control over that. And once we realize that, and that we can look for the good around us and do good around us, be that best version of us each day, every day will keep improving. And it makes no difference where you're at in life. If you're the best version of you every day, and you just focus on that every single day, people are going to look at you differently. People will respond to you differently. New opportunities will present themselves, and life will get brighter. It's just a way of being, and that's the way I choose to be. My father was always that way. I certainly learned by example, and yeah, there's another way to live, but it's not as much fun.
Sure. And it's a commitment and a practice. It's a practice to not take life so seriously, or
Right.
to know, well, then there's a solution for that. Or maybe there's 10 solutions for whatever that is, and stay focused on that solution. I really love how you ended your book.
Oh,
Okay,
good.
with
Okay.
a lady named Gina. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Now, I don't know about you, but when I see people who are in the light publicly, I look at who's around them, who is right there beside them, because that is a very important soul, okay, and player. And I remember meeting Gina, and oh my goodness, I'm like, she's stellar. Okay, she is stellar. And I mean, I just want to put a positive word in for and what you said, how people will say, yeah, I found my Gina,
Yeah.
and and I'm very thankful I have found my Gina, here. But maybe share just a little bit about her, and then I just want to just say those points you mentioned at the end. This I want to acknowledge her as well.
Well, Gina was, so for anybody watching or listening, Gina was
Yes.
my father's assistant. She was his right hand for, gosh, at least 35 years, maybe longer. Um, put it to perspective, Gina is more like a sister to me.
Okay.
She's just a magnificent woman.
Mhm.
Gina's father passed away when she was younger, and to give perspective to this, of how special Gina was to my father. When Gina got married, it was my father who walked her down the aisle and gave her away. And that just touches my
Wow.
heart when I think about it.
Wow.
Gina was such a gift to my dad.
Mm,
And he always said, you need to have a Gina. Gina was the person for him that got everything done, that made everything work. She organized not only him, but she organized his material. She made
mhm,
it, she made his job easier. And she was a gift to my father. She really was. She's an incredibly special woman,
mhm,
very organized, and is always looking for the good.
mhm,
And so
mhm,
that chapter, I had Gina write her own message. And I can remember I was sitting, Corey and I, we went to lunch with Gina one day. And I said to her, I said, Gina, I'd really like it if you would write something that I could put into the book. And I said, I don't want to write it. I think it'd be really good if it was your words.
mhm,
Well, it really touched her, and I'm grateful that she responded that way, and so she did. And I really think it adds to the book. I think it really adds a different perspective of another viewpoint of who my father was and how he was in the world. And yeah, it was a great way to kind of tail things off towards the end of the book for
oh my
sure.
gosh. So are you okay? I just want to read those little bullet
Sure.
points.
Yeah,
Oh,
please feel free.
okay, because you asked her, what does she remember that really stood out, right?
Mhm.
Through the years. You can't give too much. Make your mark on the world. Treat yourself well. Treat others as you wish to be treated. A pro is at their best regardless. And I love what you wrote earlier in the book about that too. What I want for myself, I want for others. In short, Bob was the man he showed to the world that this is just beautiful. And anyone who gets this book, look at that. You're going to see Gina, you're going to see Bob, you're going to see Brian, and this legacy is not stopping. Okay, like you have said, that we know in growth there's no end. You want more, and you want more understanding, you want more connection, and to be able to, and I just have chills talking about this, Brian, that this legacy is just going to a whole nother level of expansion here with what you and Corey are doing, in your team. And maybe you want to share a little bit about it as we're winding this up. What are you involved in right now? What would you like anybody to know about that they can be in touch with what you're doing?
Well, thanks, Judy. Here's the thing. It was important to me when I wrote this book to really share who Bob Proctor was.
Okay.
I wrote it in a what I hope is a very easy conversational tone.
Mhm.
Just stories and lessons and things that I learned growing up with him and how I used it to live a better life myself. Um, it has been an eye-opening experience, if I'm really to be honest. Once I released the book, when you're doing something like that, you never know, is this good enough?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
question
Oh,
yourself.
yeah.
And boy, the response has just been incredible. And so for me, it's important to carry on the message of who my father was and what he taught,
Okay.
because he changed lives. When we had a memorial service, we had an online memorial service for him. It was shocking. There was hundreds of thousands of people on it. The comments that were coming in from people all around the world was, wow. I don't even think Dad had any idea how far his message reached and how many people he touched.
Mhm.
So for me, I'm never going to teach like Bob Proctor. Bob Proctor's a one of a kind.
Mhm.
Um, but I can share a message from my own being in who I am
Mhm.
about who he was, how he treated me as a son, and how I live today, and how I attract good things into my life, by sharing my message of who he was in a different and unique way that I also think can really help people, help at the end of the day, shift perspective. I think it's all about shifting our perspective.
Mhm.
And so for me, that's what it's all about. You can go to my website, brianproctor.com. That's where you can find where to get the book. There's some nice bonuses there that I share. And Judy, I send out simply 2 emails a month, a
Really?
newsletter at the beginning of the month and a blog in the middle of the month. And it's all about delivering content. And it's just all value. I just Dad was always putting good out in the world. And for me, it's important that I continue to do the same thing. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just continuing to put out the message of who he was, how he taught me, and hopefully by sharing my story, I can help other people change the course of their life or change the way they look at the world to
Mhm.
live a better life as well. And that's kind of where I'm going in its simplest form.
And it sounds like you and Corey enjoy nature. You enjoy where you're living.
Yeah.
This is a good time in life right now,
Yeah.
to let some things settle out and, you
Yeah,
know,
we live in a beautiful place. It's
Mhm.
in the book.
Yeah.
It was a big goal of mine that I worked with my father. And we live in the Pacific Northwest. We're on Puget Sound, which is a big sound from the Pacific Ocean. Uh, I mean, I love nature. Corey loves nature. We can get out for beautiful walks in the hills and the trees. We've had whales 100 feet from our deck.
Mm.
We have seals all the time coming around. It's just a magnificent place, and we live in this place by design. We chose where we wanted to live, how we wanted to live. It was a goal of ours, and you know, the big thing that I always learned from Dad is that if we have a worthy goal, if we're chasing something that causes us to get out of our own way, causes us to do things in a day that we wouldn't normally do, we can have great things in our life. And I have a lot of great things in my life because I chose with conviction where I was going to go and how I was going to do it. And I never worried about, well, I won't say I never worried about it. Dad always helped me shift that perspective. You don't worry about how you're going to get there.
Mhm.
Never worry about that big thing that you got to change.
Mhm.
If you just do the little things every day, what can I do today? What one little thing can I do that's going to get me closer to my goal? Eventually, you're going to get there. And it's all those little things that add up. And before long, that big thing happened, and you don't even know how it happened. That's really what life's all about.
You used a term, actually, I was wanting to ask you while we were talking today, to define worthy goal. We make goals, but through your book, you use that term, and I'm very fascinated by that. The difference between just a goal, but when you say a worthy goal.
Well, here's where I see the difference.
Okay.
A lot of people have regular goals that you know
Mhm.
how to get there. And
Mhm.
if you know how to get there, there's not enough, in my opinion, there's not enough inspiration that will cause you to do anything differently.
Mhm.
A worthy goal is something that excites you. You don't have a clue how you're going to get there, but boy, oh boy, you know you're going to get there. A worthy goal will cause you to wake up in the morning and do things in a day that you would not normally do. That's what a worthy
Okay.
goal is. And if you will step into the uncomfortable, you'll step out of your comfort zone, learn new things, put yourself in positions that are like, ooh, this is not comfortable, but I know that by doing this, I'm going to get a little closer to my goal. That's a worthy goal because the growth that you obtain working towards that is everything. And I've always felt that, achieving that goal, that's a plus. That's a great thing. That's the bonus. But it's what you learn along the way if you're going after something big. That's everything because it changes the way you live and look at life. And if you can have a goal that inspires you to step out of your comfort zone and do things you wouldn't normally do, Judy, that's it. That's how we grow. And that's how we get more in our life. That's how we live a better life.
Mhm. I love that, Brian. And I am absolutely living a worthy goal right here at this moment. So I want to thank you very much for your time, sharing your heart, your wisdom, and your messages, and especially all that you've put into the book. My father knew the secret, and sounds like you do too.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much, Judy.
Thank you.
It's been a real pleasure being here with you today.